I haven't seen this movie yet. I don't know if you have. It's getting mixed reviews, mostly good. This is The Siege of JADOTVILLE. This you might have heard this.
The UN was established to ensure that the nations of the world would never again engage in another world war. As a neutral country, we are the second wave of Irish soldiers to be sent into the Congo.
The compound is a joke. We're wide open.
They would never dare attack United Nations company.
Do you have a plan? Just to pray there's no need for us.
Attack!
I require your surrender. If you continue to attack, we will continue to respond.
That's the trailer for The Siege of JADOTVILLE, which is now streaming on Netflix. It was to do with the 1961 aid company of the United Nations. Irishmen stuck in the Congo in the middle of a horrific siege that lasted for a number of days. Larry Dorgan, good morning.
Good morning, PJ. Larry,
you've described these as forgotten men. And as I said, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here. I do look forward to seeing it in the days to come. Tell me a bit about the Siege of JADOTVILLE. Who was involved and what happened?
Well, essentially, the 35th Battalion served in the Congo in 1961. And the unit concerned with JADOTVILLE was a company of that battalion, which was drawn from the west of Ireland primarily, but as is the nature of most companies in the Irish Army, there were troops drawn from nearly every county in Ireland, but the majority would have been from Athlone, Galway and Dublin.
Mm-hmm. There was a few Kerrymen in it, I think, as well.
And the Kerrymen stuck in everything. There was one or two of those, and there was one or two Corkmen, and you know, it depends on the skill set that the soldier has that would require him to serve with different units. But essentially, they were a Western company.
Okay. And what happened to them?
Well, the 35th Battalion were stationed in Elizabethville, and they had what they described as a changing mandate. So, like the UN was in a bit of a crisis with their mandate, wasn't defined. So it was a moving sands, it was shifting from day to day. But at some stage, an order was given to the A Company to move out to JADOTVILLE and to occupy that space. Now, it was strategically important in that it contained mines, which were important to, let's say, vested interests from around the world, which would include France, Belgium, and other countries, because it had a rich uranium deposit and cobalt. Mm. And of course, there was a need to protect that area for the future. So, against the wishes of the then President Shambe, the Irish troops were deployed out to what would be considered nowadays as a remote area, blocking off their line of logistics, etc., etc. And they were told they were put out there with no apparent mandate or good reason for them to be there, just other than a show of force. Mm. And they were put on the ground there to be in that area, to take whatever orders would come from General McKeown in Army headquarters in Elizabethville.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
why are they referred to as the forgotten men, though?
You see, they're forgotten in the sense that it was politically expedient at the time, because the Irish government was trying to impress the UN, and they were sort of paving the way for entry into what was then what is now the EU. So they didn't want to fall out without the United Nations, and they wanted to establish themselves as a new neutral nation and in that body. So there was a lot of cover-up involved. Conor O'Brien was appointed the Irish representative to the UN for that period, and of course he then was subsequently sent to the Congo, and he ultimately took charge for the UN of the whole Congo forces, which numbered 20,000 at the time. So overall, the mission was a failure because it's very hard to enforce peace, because that time it was about peacemaking rather than peace enforcement, you know. Yes. So soldiers were not prepared generally for what they met out there. Soldiers are soldiers and they learn infantry skills, which is what saved their life in JADOTVILLE.
Yeah.
But they're actually sent out in an armed police role. So they would be not as well armed as you might expect them to be, to face a much larger and stronger force.
The movie focuses on the battle and the attack. It concentrates less, I think, on the fact that so many of them were kept in captivity for quite some time. Why did it take so long for their bravery to be recognised? 2005, they were only formally recognised.
Well, there are many reasons given for this, but largely it was just to cover up and to avoid embarrassment after the battle. But just to put it back into context here, and what we're talking about is 155 men, lightly armed, defending against 3,000 men.
Yeah.
And those 3,000 men were supported by retired legionnaires from France, who were brought out there in name to protect the mines, but in fact they were part of the force. Now, only for the Irish troops being very well trained and had the ability to sort of defend themselves and dig in against all odds, there would have been a massacre.
Yeah.
But what actually happened was that they survived for 5.5 days, used all their ammunition, used up all their supplies, killed 300 of the enemy, and lost no lives.
Yeah.
Now, it was a military victory, but at the end of the day, they I hate to say they surrendered, but what happened was when they ran out of ammunition, they had to just ground their weapons because they couldn't throw stones at heavy machine guns.
Yeah.
And they were taken prisoner and held in captivity for 5 weeks before they were repatriated. Now, when they came home, they were an embarrassment to Conor O'Brien, who had failed in his mission. And but by extension, they were an embarrassment to the Irish government in that the Irish government had not made any waves when they should have. In fact, it was the British ambassador to the UN brought it up in the House of Commons and forced Frank Aiken at the time, who was the minister.
Were they effectively abandoned by their own government?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, no reinforcements. Well, there was a mild attempt to send reinforcements in, but they were actually abandoned on the ground by the Lieutenant General in charge, and also by Conor O'Brien. He saw them as a pawn on a chess game, and they were dispensable. Now, what I find most unfortunate about it is that these guys are soldiers, so they're not politically minded. You know, they're soldiers. Mm-hmm. So when they fought their guts out, and they obviously fought very well, but there wouldn't have been a communication that there is now. So these guys arrived home having done great work, expecting it to be acknowledged at least. I'm sure there must have been a lot of them suffering from post-traumatic stress. So there was no psychological intervention here or anything. Yeah. So they landed up in Gormanstown, and they were told, off you go now, and don't mention this to anybody. And it was like that for all my career in the army.
Okay. Yeah. And if something goes wrong, you suck it up and move on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the normal. When you lose, you lose. When you but having said that, these guys did everything that was asked of them and expected of them.
Yeah, and more by the sounds of things.
Way more.
Yeah. Have you seen the film?
Twice.
Does it do them justice?
Obviously, when there's a bit of to make a film. Obviously, you have to throw in a bit of drama, and you have to, there are a few inaccuracies there that you would expect to happen. First of all, there's 155 men involved, with the film centres around 30 of them, really, which would be a platoon of them. So there are factual inaccuracies. But
taking, I suppose, if you like the movie making license out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, take all the things that Netflix would have done to make it easy to cram this into an hour and a half, 2 hours. Have they done a good job?
I think they did a marvellous job. I think they did a great job. Having spoken to some of the guys who served there, it's an accurate reflection of what actually happened on the ground. And I think you could ask for no more than that. And it's a good reflection of what the actual history was. And in many cases, it vindicates them, because when they came back, they faced an extraordinarily difficult situation because they were branded as cowards. So, in their local pub, there'd be comments passed to the barman, don't serve him, he's one of the fellas who threw his hands up, you know. He's a coward. And of course, like...
That was so wrong.
Oh, absolutely, it was
wrong.
crazy. Like,
I mean, even reading about it before having seen the movie, that was so wrong.
Absolutely wrong, and it was never put right. You know, their commandant, their commanding officer never served overseas again because he chose not to, which is very probable, having been so wronged, or that command just decided, you know, to put him somewhere where he wouldn't be going overseas. And a lot of these guys left the army disgruntled. So from that point of view, it was very, very wrong.
Okay. Listen, Larry, thank you for that. As I say, I look forward to looking at the movie.
You won't be disappointed.
I saw the trailer and I kind of watched about 5 or 6 minutes of it yesterday, just knowing I'd be talking about it today.
Yeah. But as a piece of entertainment, it's well worth watching just for that alone, without ever taking the history into account. To go and see it. It's a great movie.
Well, I have great time and great respect for our peacekeeping operations overseas. It's with that context I look forward to seeing it.
Absolutely.
Good, nice talking to you, Larry.
Thanks,
and thank you.
Thank you for your time.